But yeah, I mean, let's jump into it. So it sounds like you have a couple different companies. And so have you worked with your son on many different ventures, or is it just this most recent venture that you all started working together?
Let me take a step back. I have spent of my 37 years of professional life, I've spent about half of that in a corporate environment, various corporate leadership roles, and the other half in more entrepreneurial. Uh, One of the businesses that I co-founded back 15 years ago, 2008, I think it was. Is that right? Yeah, about 2008, 2009, a business-to-business digital advertising network. He was in high school at the time, and while he was in college, he did some interning with us with that business, and he really got interested in advertising technology or ad tech. And he stuck with that once he got out of school. He went on to interact with a lot of the people that I've known and over my years. My background is predominantly in media and business information, and of that, most of it is in a digital context, even predating the commercial web. So he had some interest in this. He did some work for us with our ad network, got very interested in ad tech, got out of school, did some consulting, more around marketing, but serving that particular marketplace, worked with uh, an independent consulting firm out of New York, and crossed paths with a lot of the folks that I know. Fast forward the clock, he was off looking for his next gig. He wanted to move on from consulting and get into an operating company and get that experience. I was making some transitions in my own career, and started looking at a couple. I was advising with a few PE firms over some middle market companies. Went down the road on a couple of potential transactions, and in the process of acquiring these businesses, of course, started setting up a management schedule, and leaned on my son, given his background and skills in marketing and communications, lean on him to help with the collateral as part of our process of going through this transaction, raising money. And that we paused that deal that we were working on in 2000, but out of that came as we were looking at that business, we had a few ideas on how to take a traditional media company, transform it into a more digital centric business that went well beyond just digital media, digital advertising, actual workflow and tools. And two of those ideas we started businesses on. Not This didn't happen by design. There was no grand plan to begin with. It just sort of where life took me. One of those was what became Welcome Innovations, originally built on the vision of a SaaS company that would serve the construction industry and help the construction industry serve their consumers. So, for example, home builder community, a platform that would help them keep all of the assets that they put in a home, help keep that organized, and then at the end of the build, then have a package of all of the assets or materials that they installed in that home, as opposed to the old printed binder that most home builders still use. Um, we spent time on that business. He jumped in, stepped in as to lead product and design and marketing. Um, then the second concept that came out of my time in pursuing a transaction was the idea of a better way to produce content for media companies. Media companies for 30 years have been going through a major disruption. There certainly are winners and losers, and there are a lot of hanger-oners. And as I looked at some of these businesses through the lens of private equity, I saw this trend that there's a rising demand in content at the same time that these businesses have a lot of budget pressure, particularly on content production. So Edisource was born out of that to help fill that gap with an AI-powered solution that is used as a resource for the content creators and journalists within media companies. And and it all sort of came together, and Dylan said, "Hey, that's actually, I've had that idea for a while, and now AI makes it a lot better." And he jumped in, really embraced that, and became the product lead, the lead engineer. I don't know if he would call himself that, but he's the software developer, product lead, manages developers that we bring in, and put together from scratch this AI platform with customized models, using a variety of the LLMs out there. And it's a Gen AI tool that is specifically for newsrooms. And launched that last year, and off we go. Back to sort of the family ties, I guess we kind of stumbled into this. It certainly wasn't my grand vision back when he interned with us. I hoped and discouraged him from getting in the media business, because it's a bumpy ride, and will continue to be through dramatic changes in the coming years. But he liked it, he stuck with it, and then we got to a point, and I was working on something that interested him, and he had skills that I don't have, and he jumped in, and off we go.
Thanks for sharing that. So it sounds like he kind of did the internship, and then with you all started working together, just maybe for the resume back in the day. And then, obviously he wanted to learn from you. And then he kind of went off on his own, and then just the stars aligned for you all to kind of begin working together again.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know that he ever had a grand vision of doing something. I think he was interested in the space that I was in. Um, I don't know how much he enjoyed the internship, the part of it, and interacting with me necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think he enjoyed the work. He fell in love with the industry, and and certainly it has interesting dynamics with our relationship. In some ways, it strengthens it. It's a For me personally, as a dad, it's a great joy. It's a big motivator for me to keep driving, because success that we create is success for him. And that's really my motivation. The first time I've approached business from a very non-selfish, self-centered motivation. And so that's cool. Plenty of frustrations, very hard, probably more so for me than him, to draw the line between father and son. We're in Edisource, we're actually business partners. There are three of us. I think our business partner at times probably wonders what the hell he got into to have a father and son that are, butting heads maybe a lot more candidly than they otherwise would. But yeah, it's a fun experience, and I don't think it has the potential to be really successful for all of us involved.
Yeah.
So Scott, you stole my question, and it was about the dynamics between father and son, and partner. When there is conflict, what's your go-to resolution model for that? What's worked and what hasn't worked?
I had a friend, personal friend, not in this space at all, who made a suggestion to me early on. He said, think of treat him the way that you would treat another person if he wasn't your son. Whether it's in the dynamics with Welcome Innovations, it was more CEO to head of product, so there was a bit of subordination. But on Edisource, we're truly partners. And he is head of product, and for all practical purposes, he is the brains of the business, the operations, and the strategy moving forward, product strategy. So when my friend told me that, I tried to apply it, and it is I don't see that he responds as well as maybe what someone else would in that dynamic. Um, Probably far more frustrations for him than it is me. One example that early on that was weird for me, we would get on conference calls with prospective investors or customers. Even when we brought in, built out a bigger team and would have advisors and managers on the phone, and he would refer to me by first name. Now he still calls me dad, and even on the call, if he was to address me, he might say, "Hey, Dad, what about ABC?" But just in referencing me, it's all Scott, and uh, I'm used to it now. But it took me a while to get used to that.
What
Very
about,
professional.
yeah, what about duties and responsibilities? Do we have a clear org chart, clear duties, responsibilities, where things start, where things stop?
We do, and probably I think a temporary challenge for both of us is in the startup world, people are wearing a lot of different hats. Neither of us are quote unquote assigned to leading sales, but it's something that we have to do in many ways. I guess I'm probably taking a more active role there just because calling on people that I've been working with for 30 years or so. So I've kind of assumed in that capacity. Officially, I'm chair of Edisource. So we have clear lines on general responsibilities, but we go after customers collectively. And sometimes, my idea of follow-up timing. I'll give an example right now that there's a new customer signed up, had some questions. They are questions that I certainly can't address. He has to address it. And my timeline of what's an appropriate uh, time to respond is maybe a little different than his. And he's got a lot going on. So we probably we don't get so much in conflicts over the business strategy. That seems to all work out pretty well. I defer to him on a lot, particularly product strategy. He thinks about things, features and benefits and upgrades and tactical ways of going about accomplishing it. He thinks about that kind of stuff far better than me. He's got it. He's got some creative skills that he gets from his mom, not me. So he can see a vision of a product before it's there. I see sales and spreadsheets, and that's sort of the way I look at the world. Uh, where the conflicts is more about just in terms of um, sort of timely response time. It probably gets on his nerves that I'll, ask him, "Hey, where do we stand on A, B, and C?" And or do
Is
you
that
want me to get back with this customer? Or are you going
Yeah,
to get back to this customer? 9 times out of 10, the customer question or prospect question is something that only he can address. But my instincts as a sales guy is I want to answer that question 5 minutes after it comes in.
exactly. Exactly.
He's
I don't
trying to
work.
go. He's in the middle of developing stuff and can't just
I
stop
don't. I
and
don't work with my
focus on it.
son, but we were out with his bosses, and he was talking about a prospect, and he said, "Yeah, the prospect's dead. It's no longer a prospect." I'm like, I'm confused. Did the company close its doors? Did the founders suddenly die? He's like, no. I'm like, well, it's always a prospect. It's never dead. You just keep going. And his bosses are laughing at me. I'm like, son, never.
Well, that sounds very familiar. That's interesting you brought that up. I think it's that experience I have of seeing how the reactions from a prospect or customer, watching the reactions and having an idea of what the next two steps will be.
Yeah.
Reading those tea leaves, which is intuitive to me. I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think he probably sees it in um, a more transactional way that this prospect said X, therefore this is
Yeah.
the outcome. I look at it as they said X,
Yeah,
that means we need to go to these three directions and have this
right.
matrix of, you know, how to react with given a variety of different responses.
In that example, so you have the disagreement. It sounds like it might be ongoing. It's not completely resolved. His
Oh yeah. That's an ongoing theme, and
yeah.
it's interesting when we're all together. My wife and I and Dylan. There, it doesn't go on too long before she'll say, "Okay, no more business talk. Let's turn that off. I don't want to hear it." And if one of us goes to complain to her about the other, she is very quick to cut us off and say, I
So
don't want to get involved.
in the past, if Dylan wasn't your son, how would you have reacted to that scenario where you're getting this pushback from sales follow-up time? Has your process changed because it's a family member?
Um, it's a good question. I think about frequently. I'd like to say no. Um, I'd like what my emotions say is if it wasn't a family member, I wouldn't get the reaction that I got. I don't know what his perspective is when he asked me to do something, how I react. I don't know how that lines up with what he wanted to hear. But I know that the challenge is I get faced with reactions that are very different from what I had experienced in the past when I was working with someone that was not a family member.
What is the ownership structure look like?
He and I are equal partners with Edisource. We do have a third partner as well, but he and I
So is it 33, 33, 33, or
we did it a little different than that. I had already the other partner and I have been business partners for years. And so when we came up originally with the concept, we had sort of already agreed we're going to split it in half. And then once Dylan got involved, then I said, well, let's just do this. Half of whatever I'm worth or not worth is going to end up
yeah,
with him. I have one other son. So just, you know, take the other half and try to keep everything pretty even between the two of us. And
yeah. And then the reason I asked that question is I owned a company that the two other partners, it was a third, a third, a third. And it was one of the most challenging structures I've ever had in business because, you needed somebody for majority, and that somebody often changed. And it was always kind of this dynamic of, how do I get somebody on my team? And then one person, may have been voted out. So it's a challenging structure when.
yeah. Um, interesting. I think because we are still in startup mode, there's not a whole lot of corporate governance
Yeah.
that requires a board level vote. Certainly structurally, the way I've all the two business I'm involved with now, um, Derek, who is the third person in Edisource, he is also a co-founder and serves as chair of Welcome Innovations. But the way we structure those corporate agreements is the co-founders all have equal vote. The
Yeah.
equity allocation is just simply that how money gets carved up
Yeah. Yeah.
in an exit, but really has no implications from now until the time we exit.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up. Trevor and I are working on a new client, and we were talking about that. Just because you have the ownership split, that doesn't mean that profits have to follow the ownership split. Doesn't mean that responsibilities or voting rights are equally divided. You can have a minority shareholder that controls everything.
Right, right.
What they say goes.
Right.
Like you said, if it gets sold one day, then it's that piece will kick in. So.
Yeah, then you've got a structure that says here's how we're going to take every dollar and divide it up. That's already set, but that doesn't have an impact on how we run the business. Fortunately, Derek and I have been business partners for over about 20 years. So we've got a pretty good working rapport on how to interact with each other. I think for Dylan and me, it's certainly has improved from my perspective. Um, I'm a lot more cognizant of when I'm talking to him like I would another colleague versus how I might talk to him as a father. I think, and he catches that very quickly. If I start putting the father tone, I think naturally, just as a 32-year-old, there's resistance to that anyway, whether you're working together or not. But certainly in the business context, he's pretty quick to point out, I am not your employee, and which he's right. He's right, and so I'm much more careful. But I have to be very conscious about staying away from, well, just do it because I said do it.
Yeah, yeah. We work a lot with clients on transition of family businesses, generational businesses. And we talk a lot about, if tomorrow, God forbid, a bus came by and took you out, what happens? Have you had those discussions and figured out how this company, beyond just the family dynamics piece of how the company survives?
Yeah, Welcome Innovations is much further along. We've been around for 3 years. We set it up as a C Corp. It was by design early on. It was going to be a business that we were raising money. We've actually since made a pivot when the venture market collapsed and said, okay, scrap all of that. We're going to go after a couple of customers to try to revenue fund this. For Edisource, which is a partnership multi-member LLC, we don't have as much protections and redundancies in place at the moment.
Yeah.
However, when we do go to get the liability insurance and D&O insurance, Dylan is definitely the most what do they call it? It's not the most important man. It's
He-Man.
yeah, I can't remember, but there's a term for it that basically is if this person something happened to them, the company would be at real risk, and he is definitely that. I am not.
Yeah,
I
the
can be
Key-Man, like a
replaced.
Key-Man insurance policy.
Key man. Key man is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Key man.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, y'all have taken some risks together. This venture at a source is a risk that y'all are taking together, right? And then in a startup, you're taking bets, you're making bets all the time on what's going to hit. Um, can you share like, maybe some bets y'all took together, whether in this venture or another one that did work and didn't work, and how y'all kind of learned from that, or what it kind of taught you in working together?
Well, we're still new at this. I mean, Welcome Innovations got started really in 2023. Uh, I guess maybe end of 2022. And we're launching an MVP next week. He's been less involved once we started Edisource, and he'll be doing a lot more formal transition when we Welcome Innovations gets to a point to hire some staff. So we're still on the ride,
Okay.
and can't really point to anything in particular. I can look at tactical successes that we had going back to when he was an intern that gave him responsibilities for managing our press releases and announcements and even creating the copy around that. So seeing that get done was cool as a dad, and obviously appreciated as a manager. But now, yeah, I'm amazed daily. I probably emotionally get very defensive when someone from the outside criticizes something about our product or questions it. I'm actually quick to defend, maybe more than I should be. But yeah, I don't. I don't know that we can point to any big thing. It's more the tactical wins that we go into a sales call with a new customer. The customer says, I love that. This works great. Or the customer says, I wish I could do A, B, and C. I really turn on I kind of become the student and I listen to what he says and what he suggests and the rationale for why do it this way versus that way. I really, I don't feel like I have a lot of additional comments to offer. So I try to listen and learn. And maybe just that is a good recipe, willing to learn, willingness to say, it doesn't matter whether it's my son or someone else. There's someone here who really understands this and has a much better handle on the tactical applications and the technologies that can support certain product objectives. And I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. And that may be more come from my background as a manager, just my management style. I always would joke if I was leading a business or a division, I would joke with my key management team and say, I do not want to be the smartest guy in the room. In fact, I want to be the least smartest in the room. And I've always, as a manager, I've always invited debate. I would also tell folks that if you're not disagreeing with me at least a couple of times a month, then you're not doing your job.
Right. Yeah, we're kind of coasting. We're not pushing the limits hard enough if we're not disagreeing.
Hey,
You touched
Scott,
on something. You
go
touched
ahead.
on something there about like pride when you're working together with your son. If there was so many kind of negative feedback from the outside on a product, then the pride that you take in the business that you're doing and the work that your son's producing and the work that y'all are producing together, like the stats show that rings and helps support the stats of like family businesses end up being 10 to 15% more profitable and longer lasting than non-family businesses. And
I
I
didn't
think
know
that's a
that.
key, and I think that's a key point because of the pride and how much you care about the brand that is your family. It's interesting that kind of rings true, that you kind of step up a little bit, maybe more, because of the family venture that you're in.
Yeah, I'll point to an example with Welcome Innovations. So we were going down the road. Our whole business plan was based on raising a couple of $1 million of pre-seed and seed, using that to build out our MVP. So all of the product design and the march toward that MVP was based on the assumption of having some substantial capital to fuel it and a big market launch. Well, year and a half, year ago or so, when we said, okay, there is no pre-revenue money out there to speak of. So we got to take a pause. We got to make a pivot toward let's find a few customers where we can take one or two features within our product roadmap, get those executed and generate revenue and use that revenue to help fuel a bit more. And then once we get some a few months of steady revenue under our belt, then we can go back to the venture community and raise some money. But in that process, that also means that a lot of what we built, the prototypes, even the beta solution that I thought was really cool, had that same sense of pride. My son was the architect and oversaw all of that. Anything that a user would see, it came from him, or at least his vision. And now that we've made a change and where we've gone from having this really flashy uh, thing to something that's more of a box that has just some random colors on it. The idea of ignoring all of the design that went into our first version, that all of that design has sort of been parked for now. And I have a little bit of a hard time with that. And we'll even go to him and say periodically and say, okay, now we're going to roll this feature out and we're going to do it. It's going to look very different. What do you think about this user experience? Because even though he wouldn't care, I'm still protective of what he built 2 years ago. And that's, there's no need to be. but I think there is a parental instinct that kicks in.
Interesting.
Probably the
So,
same
Scott,
reason that in our attic, we've got boxes and boxes of school projects that our kids did when they were young.
nice.
I love
Scott,
it. And he's only
Trevor,
30. You're 30, go ahead.
yeah, Trevor always makes fun of me as being the boomer in the room. So as two boomers, there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening today. Well, what are some of the mistakes that you've made along the way? I'm always curious of the mistakes because that's where all my learnings have come, not from the successes, but the mistakes. What are some goof ups you've done over your long career here? What have you seen?
Not changing course quick enough.
Interesting.
Above and more than anything else. Uh, for better or worse, I have a perseverance gene in me that just will not give up, even when I need to. And in particular, I can point back to Welcome Innovations when we started that in end of 2022, and several folks, advisors said, I think it's going to be tough to raise money. Interest rates are up now. Venture market is going to just collapse. And I kept hanging on to this original vision that we had to get investor money to fund our MVP. I think if in hindsight, probably should have pursued that maybe for another 6 months, but then ignored the carrots that would get dangled out there along the way. Because I would see those carrots and say, oh, well, that's reason to be optimistic. I think this may happen. Well, before you know it, 3 months to get to this carrot, it's pulled away, sort of like Charlie Brown when he goes to kick the football and Lucy keeps pulling it back. I've definitely have been that victim, and it's all self-imposed. I think even my board would have preferred that we shifted gears a year before we did and said, let's just try to go get a customer. And I was stuck on this is the path, and we're going to do it, and we're going to get there.
So you've obviously been rewarded in the past of being diligent, non-wavering, just push through and stay the course and not pivot. We all have. And the advice is, you've noticed this is a weak spot that sometimes I need to pivot quicker. What's the test for that? Have you figured out when it's time to pivot and when you just keep going? Is it an instinctual?
I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that. I have a buddy, again, unrelated to the business, who said, sometimes your optimism is your biggest enemy. Because I tend to go into conversations, go into engaging in something, assuming the best in people. It doesn't mean people aren't bad if they don't do it. It means that there are a lot of great intentions out there. And I tend to when I hear something or I see a pattern, I tend to think that people will follow through with what they say. It's an unrealistic expectation. Even of myself, I like to pride myself that if someone contacts me, I will follow up. That's why we're on this call.
Yeah.
If it looked like somebody took the time to find me and put a message together, that if there is any chance that there could be something of interest, then I do try to I try to respond. And that also, and so I have that same expectation of other people, of giving the benefit of the doubt, that you tell me that you like what we're doing and you want to move forward with investing or buying, and you want to do it in this timeline, then I take that at face value until I start seeing signs that indicate that's not how it's going to play out. But usually by the time the other signs are there, you've already burned some.
I'm the same way. I always look for the good in people. Even when I was 10, I gave away my parents' bikes to two strangers because they said they were going to bring them back. The date, I don't think they've ever been returned.
They haven't seen that bike.
But to that point, what I've found, and this is interesting, as you were saying this, sometimes I'm my worst enemy is because I can't see it because I'm too close to it, and I am optimistic about things. So what I have found is I have people in my life that will tell me the truth or tell me what they see that I don't necessarily see at that moment. So I think for me, those pivots come when 3 or more of my close advisors tell me, Thor, it's time to pivot. So I
Yeah.
don't use others, but people that I respect, and I get multiple opinions.
Yeah. I try to do that. I don't do it as well as I should. There's certainly in a business context, there are people that I look to, either involved with what I'm working on or not involved, that I look to that have some that I admire what they've done in business and the decisions that they've made. But I think a lot of times, if I'm really stuck on something and I believe that I can overcome the odds, I may not seek out those people that might give me something other than what I want to hear.
You don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear the doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Getting those fresh perspectives, and that's an area I need to improve.
Yeah.
Is seeking those alternative views.
Yeah, and make sure you don't ask a W-2 employee what you should do as
No.
because they don't have any clue what it's
Yeah,
like.
W-2 employees, not criticizing my
No, not
my
at all.
livelihood.
Not at all.
My livelihood and raising my family was dependent as a W-2 employee. But my other partner and I joke that W-2 employees, whether it's a receptionist or the CEO, if they are a hired gun, they care about 3 things. Don't add more work to my plate.
Yeah.
Don't screw around with anything that's going to affect my bonus, and damn sure don't do anything that would put my job at risk. They don't want to get fired, they don't want to lose their bonus, and they don't want to have to do more work.
Yep. And until you have difficulty making payroll on Friday with no money in the bank, you don't know what it's like.
Boy, that's true. A bit of a pet peeve that gets under my skin is when I hear an executive who's been a longtime career corporate person, which I totally respect, but get up on stage and talk about being entrepreneurial and the way we have done this. And I want to say, I told one of them one time when he got off, I said, now remind me, have you ever had to make a decision about paying your mortgage or paying for a business expense or payroll? Until you've had to make those decisions, that's what entrepreneurial is. Getting paid a healthy 6-figure salary to go build something is not entrepreneur. I mean, there's an entrepreneurial spirit. That is not being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. We're missing some genes somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, it's one thing that you were kind of mentioning of trying to find outside advisors and outside partners to give you honest feedback. It's extremely hard. It's easy for us to live in kind of an echo chamber of thoughts of, doubt. Should I cut bait here?
Yep.
Should I move in a different direction and live in this island? But finding like trusted vendors, trusted partners that you've known for a long time to give you honest feedback is quite hard, right? That aren't just paid consultants that just want to stick around, just to kind of make more money. Can you tell me about that? Like how you've tried to seek out other partners to give you honest feedback? I mean, there's groups like EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, or YPO, all kinds of groups like that. Are you a member of any, peer groups to help find those kind of non-biased, unbiased partners?
Well, I'm no longer eligible for a YPO.
I'm with you on that one. Yes, we got aged out. They have the gold membership now.
Maybe I should look at that. The seniors of the gold membership. I haven't done that as well as I should. Uh, what I have done well in that context is with both businesses, uh, the first the first real tactical thing I did was put together an advisory board. And the advisory board was made up of people who had either the functional background and expertise or had the domain expertise. So Welcome Innovations, for example, first thing I did is I went to someone, we were going to raise money. So I went to a friend of mine that's in private equity. I went to a realtor who is also a close personal friend, and does very, very successful in Texas. And then I went to a home builder, and went to those people because that was the target market that we were going after. And then the person who has just the uh, uh, general SaaS and AI, machine learning, running those types of businesses came in. So I did do that. We've started that with Edisource. We have one formal advisor. We're in the process of bringing on a second. We have one other person that I do lean on. In fact, as recent as yesterday, to get a perspective. But um, yeah, I haven't done anything with any organizations,
Mhm.
largely in part because uh, most of that has a cost, and 100% of every
Yeah.
dime in both businesses has gone on to keeping the lights on, or making them more powerful, buying uh, a more efficient bulb.
Is that obviously your son's been involved in both these ventures, so is that a discussion that you consciously have with him about the importance of bringing on the advisory board? Is that something y'all
Oh
are
yeah,
discussing?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
With one of our clients, he took over his dad's business after a sudden death, and he verbalized that if he had only known, the trusted partners, vendors, channel partners that his dad had done business with, that had been documented or discussed somewhere, then it would have saved him 5 years of time,
Oh,
you
oh,
know, at
absolutely.
least, at
Yeah,
least. But he didn't, he had to kind of rummage through developing those partners and those
yeah. Who are
relationships.
the people that he leaned on to get
Yep.
advice and perspective, bounce ideas off?
Yep. So that's one of the things, like when we're thinking through redundancy, whether it's a death or who knows what, you want to go on vacation for a year, right? Who are these top 20 people that you're working with, and who do you call? What are their contact information, and in what order, and what role do they play? I even for my wife, it's like if I died, do I want you to fire sale the CPA firm? No, absolutely not. That's the worst thing you could do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this and the stats show,
Keep the attorney and the accountants.
right? And well, in the stats show, 62% of the time after the founder's death, the business is out of business in 12 months, which is nuts, right? Sometimes, a lot of times for small businesses, the company isn't even sellable, right? Because there really isn't a team, there isn't any redundancy built. So it's one of the things that we try to work on, is thinking through redundancy. And it's like, okay, well, if that's what you would have done when you died, how about we work on that right now?
Yeah.
Is the brother going to be the first one to call to step in as the CEO? Well, the brother is running his own business. He can only
Hmm.
do that for 2 to 4 to 5 weeks. He's got to run his own family, his own business. So who that key man, that key player, without just relying on an insurance policy, who would that be to kind of run the business? Because for most entrepreneur families, that business is the biggest piece of their net worth. You
Yeah.
know, insurance policy does one thing, that's a band-aid, right? But the
Yeah.
the business is paying the bills and creating the livelihood for the rest of the family. And so it's a fun project to work on. I mean, you are exceptional in, I think, communication, with your son and advisors. You're an advanced thinker in that realm. And I think most people, it's this elephant in the room where it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's a difficult conversation. It takes a lot of time, to think through redundancy and in a team and involving family. So I applaud you in really like thinking through that, even though you kind of say you've done it haphazardly, it seems like it's very intentional too.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I'll tell you where that comes from. That comes from years in corporate life, where succession planning, as
Yeah.
uh, escalate in your career development.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate, I guess, that the businesses where I've been really advocated for succession
That's
planning,
awesome.
um, and that's the whole idea around that is creating redundancies that if something happened to me, then um, uh, I hope everyone cries and stays sad, but I hope that,
Right?
but
We want them to celebrate your life, not
but I
just
want the
figure out how to make payroll next week.
yeah, exactly. I want the things that I get that I got started, that those wheels keep turning.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, let's face it, it's easier to start a company now versus 20 years ago. Right. So a lot of entrepreneurs these days are getting started much earlier. They're not getting maybe the corporate exposure that maybe you got to teach redundancy, you know?
Well, I do, and that's a good point. I see that. Um, I do see that with my son because a lot of what he has done has been in truly an entrepreneurial environment where you're on your own, and whether even if you're a consultant working for a consultancy, um, you're only there as long as the client who needs you is there, right? Um, so the dynamics of intercompany politics, even in a startup, I mean, it's not politics per se, but there are dynamics. I learned early on when I first became a manager that you cannot coach, lead, manage everyone in the same way. You have to figure out how they respond, and you've got to respond to them. And even if you think that the way they look at the world is ridiculous, it doesn't mean that you're still not going to change them. So you're
Mm.
either going to live with them and their ridiculous way of looking at the world,
Yeah.
or you make a change. But if you choose to live with them, um, then you've got to figure out what's the right communication method, what's the right way to interact and to have constructive conversations, and it's going to be different with everyone.
Yeah, when we get started on a lot of projects, and then when we bring on new team members, even in our own company, we have everybody do an Enneagram, kind of a test to understand their nature, their personality,
Mhm.
their communication styles, right? Because sometimes we're crazy different. Do y'all ever have y'all done those together in an Enneagram or any kind of disc assessment to understand your communication methods and personality styles?
No, I've done that in prior life, certainly plenty of times with in my corporate world,
Mhm.
and that's important. I value that. Both businesses are at such a
Small scale.
early stage that it's 100% of the bandwidth is spent on keeping the wheels on the bus and trying to get to the next bus stop.
Yep. Where's that next dollar?
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I could talk to you for 5 more hours. This has been terrific. Thanks for, following up and taking this interview. If you think Dylan would be up for chatting, I would absolutely love to get his perspective as well. We actively work together in the future of my CPA firm, as well as working with other family business clients, and it's fun. I like challenges. I like solving complex problems or working on complex problems. They're not always so easily solvable. But when we're doing with people that really share our vision and get along, it's a lot of fun.
To me, it almost sounds cliche, but culture is so important. I would rather have someone who may lack in skills, but have the get along gene. That when we were young, all young, Maybe I'm dating myself, but for kindergarten, first, second, third grade, there was always a section that was satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And one of the questions that I remember was, plays well with others. And I have long thought that anyone that I would hire or work with, I want to check that box that they play well with others. And we've all obviously run across a lot of people that I don't think that box was ever checked for them. And sometimes you're well too far into it when you realize it. But I struggle a lot with people that don't play well with others. I'll take cooperative attitude and cooperative and collaborative approach. I'll take that over intellect capacity anytime.
Well, that's maybe a good one to close on, the get along gene. You've got a bunch of good takeaways.
Well, that's what happens when you've been wandering around for 62 years trying to figure out what the hell you're going to do when you grow up.
I love it, Scott. Well, this has been fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to talk with your son, and again, it's fantastic chatting with you. This is phenomenal.
Cool. Well, good to talk with you.